Hello everybody. This is going to be a video like most of my videos. For one, unscripted, but for two, aimed at newer players. So if you're a super Omega veteran of PoE, this video probably won't be super helpful for you, but this is more aimed at people that are playing PoE 2 for the first time, like all of us on Friday. Um, so if you're a little worried about dying or anything like that, this should help you. Um, if you're not a new player, yeah, this probably just won't be very helpful. Sorry if I repeat myself a little bit. Like I said, I don't like scripting my videos, so that's probably why. I have like a short list of things I want to make sure I get to. So in PoE 2, there's a lot of things that are going to stay the same as PoE 1, which obviously is what is in front of you right now. The first one is Energy Shield. That's the blue bar right here above my life. Um, Incoming damage will break your energy shield before it comes away from your life. Same thing in PoE 2. It slowly recharges after not taking hits for a couple seconds. Yeah, that's there's a type of damage that bypasses it called chaos damage, which is usually like poisons. But that isn't really something you have to worry about right now. The second defense type is evasion, which is just like the chance to dodge if there's an attack coming at you. You might just miss your character if you have really high evasion, like this character does. Um, The third type is armor, which armor actually kind of works in a weird way in PoE. It makes you take less damage from smaller hits, but it doesn't really. It's calculated in a strange way that it's not really worth getting into. You'd probably be better off reading on the wiki page how it actually works. But there is a difference between that. Another thing that's staying the same is a lot of skill gems and support gems are either doing the same thing they did in PoE 1 or something similar. So that's worth noting too. If you, I mean, you can get PoE 1 in the week that we're all waiting because it's free. But the thing that's important, I think, to learn is that the whole tag system that PoE uses is also staying the same. So if I just hover over, this is my main skill, Kinetic Blast of Clustering. At the very top, you can see it has the words attack, comma, projectile, AoE, physical. Those are what we call the tags. So KB is attack tagged because it's an attack. The first word will always be attack or spell. And you'll see things on your tree that will say like spell damage or attack damage. If you're using a gem that is attack tagged, but you get a piece of gear or a node that says spells, it won't scale it. It has to be, all your tags need to line up for scaling and things like that. So that's really good to learn. And also, projectile, AoE, physical, anything that scales those specific tags will scale this specific skill. And that's the same way in PoE 2. Everything's got a tag. There's a bunch of different things that will scale that. So that is worth paying attention to. Especially the attack versus spell tag. That's the big one to read. Um, I would recommend that you choose your ascendancy before you start PoE 2. I think it's a good idea to go in with a little bit of a plan. It seems like the new player experience is going to be actually quite good for not going in with a plan because they have like recommended gems and things like that, but they aren't recommending builds completely or skill tree choices as far as I know. So I would plan a little bit. There's not going to be guides to follow, but obviously, like, oh, if you want to play Lightning Sorceress, you might want to go look at the beginning of where the sorcerer starts on the tree and read some of the nodes and find some lightning damage things or something like that. Um, as far as staying alive, and this is like the big thing that I try to tell new players, especially in PoE 1, but I can guarantee it's going to be the same thing in PoE 2, is to not die in this game. The biggest thing you can do is stack your defense. And what I mean by that is like you want layers of defense. So this is a terrible character as an example because this character is actually pretty squishy. But like a really tanky character in PoE, you would have like a crazy high chance to block. You would be recovering life every time you block, and then you would also, if you don't block, then you would have a okay. So say a spell's coming at you, you have like a 60% chance to block the spell. That already is more than half that it's not even going to hit you. But if it does hit you, then if you have a 100% chance to suppress spells, which is this stat right here, spell suppression means you take half damage from the spell. So do you see what I mean by layering? So like it's very unlikely that it does hit you, but if it does, then you take half damage. That kind of thing is really good. And if you keep stacking these defenses, that's what's going to keep you alive. And another really big thing for defenses is your resistances. So you have your fire res, your cold res, lightning res, and chaos res. That is also the same in PoE too. It is usually harder to get chaos resistance than it is the other three. Usually in PoE 1, you can be res capped as early as like Act 2, which you should be res capped that early. It might be a little harder in PoE 2 without the crafting bench, but with the sockets on the gear, seems like that might not be entirely the case. So that's like for the PoE 2 campaign, the very first thing every experienced player is going to be doing for defense is getting res capped. 75% is the cap. There's ways to go over it, but you won't get that in the campaign. So if you're starting to feel squishy, or well, even if you're not, you should just focus on getting resistance capped by getting fire, lightning, and cold resist on your gear or whatever. That's going to be just huge for defense. It just makes you take so much less damage, and it prevents you from getting just like completely demolished. And it seems like things in PoE 2 are going to hit pretty hard, so make sure you cap your res. Uniques are not always better than rare items. Like this rare wand is probably better than any unique wand I could put here. Actually, it definitely is. It's going to be the same way in PoE 2. Just because you drop a unique item, it's exciting because it's like, oh, the rarest item type or whatever. Do not just immediately equip it. Make sure you read it and understand it. That's kind of another thing PoE demands from the player is reading it, reading everything. PoE is definitely a game that gets easier the more you're willing to read things. Like if you sit here and read your gems and what they do and how they all work, you'll be 1,000 times better off than you would if you just like, oh, this thing shoots an arrow, cool, put it in. Well, you kind of know what it does, but not really. So just make sure you read everything. But yeah, uniques are not always an auto equip. A lot of uniques have downsides. So whatever you drop, I mean, it might be super cool. It might work, but it might also be significantly worse than what you're using. So keep that in mind that uniques are not always better than rare items or even blue items, depending on what you got. Next thing I got is do not be afraid to craft, especially in the campaign. They are going to be showering you with currency, it sounds like. They're dropping like exalted orbs in Act 1. Another thing about reading, just hover over, that's a bad example because that one's changing. Hover over the currency, read what it does, and then use it. It's not that hard. It's very basic, simple crafting. There's pretty much no complex crafting in PoE 2 yet. So make sure you use your crafting currency to upgrade your items, reroll the mods on your items, get good stats that do good things for your build or that you think are good. Nobody's really going to know what's good because everybody's new to the game, but still, you want to kind of steer your build in a direction that makes sense. That's the big thing. Also, boots, you want move speed on them. That's pretty much the best stat you can get on boots, especially in the campaign. If you can get, like, I would take boots with 30% move speed over boots that have like 5 good affixes. Like if there were boots that just said you have 30% move speed, I'd be like, give them to me, sure. So yeah, it's usually one of the only spots you can get move speed. So if you're crafting boots, make sure you use move speed. And speaking of crafting, they are putting essences in PoE 2. If you don't know what these are an item that guarantees a stat. So I'm actually not going to do this because that would be bad. So again, it's just something you got to read, but it tells you that it's going to upgrade a normal item to a rare, or it's going to reforge a rare, guaranteeing one property, and then it lists all the properties. So this wand is a one-handed weapon. If I used this essence on this wand, it would re-roll all of the stats on it, and it would guarantee that I would get 1.1 to 1.3 physical attack leached as life, because that's what it changes for weapons. So that is a guaranteed mod, and these are very, very good because you can guarantee a mod, right? So make sure you use these. You should craft pretty much every gear slot you have and try to get your gear better than just whatever you picked up off the ground. Yeah. So the only other thing I really wanted to mention is it looks like the game is pretty tough. It looks like the campaign is going to be uh, pretty trying. A lot of people are calling it Souls-like. I don't know if that's like the perfect term for it, but what I will say is it's probably not a bad idea to take a Souls-like approach to it, especially like Elden Ring, where like, I mean, the devs even said this, right? Like, if a boss is totally just kicking your ass, it's a good time to like back out and like go explore some other stuff and get some upgrades and better loot and come back, and then retry the boss. You know, get some levels, get better gear, get some points in your tree. That's the big thing. Honestly, the biggest thing with PoE is just the willingness to learn. That's PoE 1, I think, is an easier game, definitely by the looks of it, but a lot of PoE 1 ended up boiling down to game knowledge. Once you had a ton of game knowledge in PoE 1, the end game really did become so easy to the point that you were just kind of like farming with your brain turned off. I don't think PoE 2 will necessarily get to that point, or not as quickly, definitely not in the campaign, but I think that really just speaks to like how much you're going to really want to go into PoE 2 like willing to read stuff, figure out how things work, look at different mechanics and try all that out. That's pretty much all I got. If you have any questions about PoE 2 or PoE 1 or anything, leave a comment, join the Discord. We have a big PoE section that helps out new players, and I hope this was helpful. Yeah, that's all I got for you. Bye, everybody.